Welcome again, everyone that I missed in our first welcome. Thank you for coming to Senior Planet. This is a momentous evening for us. I have never seen this place so full. I hope the fire marshal doesn't stop by. We are honored and flattered and so excited to host you here tonight for our Valentine's Day edition of our Planet Talk. The gentleman sitting next to me, Hal Spielman.
He's standing. It's hard to believe.
Standing, sorry. I'm nervous. We've never had this many people here. We're celebrating our 1-year anniversary. Not as a couple.
Very nice.
But as friends. A year ago, Hal came here for our very first Valentine's party, just minutes after we had opened our doors. For a very wild...
He heard there was free food.
A pretty wild evening. We hope we ran out of wine early, so this evening will not be quite as wild. But it was a lot of fun.
It'll go a lot longer, though.
It'll seem a lot longer, but it should be rewarding. We are so honored to have speakers of the caliber of Marc and Eric here tonight.
My name's Hal.
He's
Hal and Eric.
Eric was last night.
I am way too nervous to do this, so how about I turn it over to the experts and we give them a big round of applause. These guys.
Thank you, Kimberly. Just so you know the difference between us, that's Hal.
That's Marc.
And I'm Marc. So that's the
Yeah, but I noticed, Marc, there are more people here tonight than listen to our radio show.
Yes, that's right. We broadcast on a college radio station where the information we give, we're not resonating with the 18, 19-year-old group. I just don't know why. You know, we're not really getting the audience that's listening to, that crazy rock and roll music. But people asked, first of all, want to say, if you could turn off your cell phones if they're on, appreciate it. We have very limited attention spans, and we get diverted really easily. So if we hear a ringtone, we sort of get thrown off. If you wouldn't mind.
Wait a second. Okay.
And we, of course, want to welcome you here tonight.
As Marc says, we're kind of involved in the Suddenly Solo activity that it shows itself in this radio show and our website, suddenlysolo.org. And it is an information site that changes almost daily, and it's filled with information that is appropriate. I mean, originally we started out aimed at men, but we find women are finding that the information is as meaningful to them as it is to widowed men, widowed or divorced men.
Yeah, and our research does cover men and women. We surveyed men and women in the demographic that we look at, which is widowed or divorced over 55.
Well, how many people here are formerly married or widowed or divorced?
Widowed, divorced.
Widowed or divorced. Well, let me tell you, you're one of 19 million people. According to the census data, there are 19 million singles over 55. I'm one of them. And
so now you only have to find the other 18,999,000.
And it is a very meaningful part of our total population. And more attention is being paid to people in this category. We did a talk here a while ago called Aging 2.0, and this is a group that is aimed at developing products specifically for the mature population. But let me tell you a little bit about how this all came about. I was widowed about 6 years ago, and I discovered little things like I didn't know where the checkbook was. I didn't cook. I'd never cooked in my life. And what was really devastating is that I didn't know how to use a washing machine. I'd never done a laundry in my life. Now, you know, how could that possibly happen? But, you know, I never lived alone. Other people did the laundry. I bought washing machines. You know, I'd go to Consumers Report.
You supervised the purchasing department, but not. And
I must say that the first time I did do a washing, I dumped too much stuff in.
The salt.
And then when I started it, I pulled the knob off the machine.
Instead of...
So and at that point, I really found out you have to read the manuals. You really have to read the manuals.
We call it RTFM. Read the freaking manuals.
You say freaking.
We're in fixed ground.
But what happened is that I then went online to see what I could find that would be useful to a single person, because obviously people were out there coping with exactly the same situation. And what I found was nothing. There's a lot of books
for men.
For men. There are a lot of books out there for women. There is nothing out there for men. So you get online and you find book after book, generally by a woman psychologist or a woman writing about her personal memoir or of her memoirs of her friends. But that's not what I consider a learning tool. They can be very interesting reading, but my field is market research. And my clients were the largest corporations in the world. General Motors, Ford, Clairol, L'Oreal, companies like that, Kimberly-Clark, were all our clients, and we were doing research for them. In my field, I've been in the research field for 50 years. So I said, let me take a look at this as if it's a research problem. It's what we call gap analysis. And the first thing I did was I did 14 depth interviews. I met with men who were widowed widowed or divorced after a long-term time together. And it was very, very interesting, the kinds of things they were raising. They were talking about where they live, where they eat, where they get their laundry done, the same thing. I mean, do you remember that one with the white shirt?
Yeah, a gentleman lost his wife
and for a weekend.
Had no idea.
He didn't know where to get
a white shirt.
He was a white shirt guy with a tie, and he didn't know where to get his shirts.
It had always been in the closet. They mysteriously appeared, and he had really no idea how to do it.
So, I could see that there were real gaps, and we eventually did 16 depth interviews with women. I didn't do those. I listened to the tape, but they were done by professional researchers. And women were talking about something totally different. They didn't talk about where they live. They didn't talk about eating or food. They talked about relationships and sex. I mean, very openly, the women talked to other women about sex. The men were focused on how do they get their next meal.
Yep.
It was very revealing. And so what that led to was eventually 7 different research studies, 6 more research studies that I did. We eventually ended up interviewing over 1,000 men in this category, all over 55, mostly in their 60s and 70s, that were widowed or divorced, and over 600 women that were in a similar situation. And it was totally revealing, and of course, totally different in terms of what we were learning from what you find in the memoirs that you find that are fun to read, but they're not really based on real information and real data. And we wanted to get real information, and that's how Marc got involved in this, because Marc writes, I have experiences.
Hal can't spell.
And I can't spell. That's among other things. I can't spell. There were just a whole different realm of data. And we started finding things like we call media myths. And we'll talk about that. By the way, as we go, if you have any questions, let's stop and ask questions.
Raise your hand. We'll stop. This isn't that structured.
It's not that formal. On the other hand, if we are going to get to it later on, we'll say so. And if we don't know how to answer it, we'll ignore you.
We'll make something up. Look, I see. Yeah, you got a question already.
Oh, okay.
The demos.
They were all in over 55, generally focused on 60s and 70s. That's the bulk. And it was national samples.
Yeah.
And they were all widowed or divorced, coming out of long-term, all at least in a 20-year relationship. They were 100% white. Now, let me explain that. We made a decision, and it was based on statistical information, that we could not build a sufficiently large sample of blacks or of Hispanics. And we knew from data, specifically data that Ebony magazine had published, that we would be running into some very different thought patterns. And frankly, I couldn't afford to build those samples. It would have been extremely costly, and since I was funding it, I said we have to put a limit on it. At some point, we might turn around and do exactly the same studies
people have
with a
asked
sample of black and a sample of
We'd focus on
Hispanics.
different demo.
But it would be expensive to do because the black population is just over 12% in the country. Hispanic population a little bit bigger than that. So that's the reason for it.
Want to ask the question, Hal?
Oh, I thought you were going to ask the question.
If you want me to.
You ask the question.
All right, I'll ask the question. And it keeps us going on the topic. So, how many, you can raise your hand, are you currently in a monogamous relationship? Currently in, don't be shy.
Well,
You know when the interns and the staff start answering the questions here.
Well, that's interesting because in a national sample, because all of our work, by the way, was national.
Yeah,
we didn't focus in one area. In a national sample of 400 women and 345 men, 38% of the women said they were in a monogamous relationship, and 41% of the men, almost the same, said the same thing. Now, of course, it's not easy, we know, to get into a relationship because, in truth, the numbers work against women.
Yeah.
At 25, the ratio is 1-to-1, singles. At 65,
Male, female.
it's almost 3-to-1, women to men.
Men.
It makes it extremely
There are
difficult.
less guys out there.
Yeah. I mean, we say, hey, for a guy, we got to service at least 3 women. We do our best, but we have some.
The line
some of us have some limitations.
The line is getting long. Yeah. So the odds work against the female population as the age spectrum shifts steadily over.
But there are ways that people do meet. And let me ask you, how many people have gone online? Yeah.
That's the numbers.
Because again, from our data, 43% of women and 56% say they have gone online. And there are very active sites, particularly for seniors.
Specialty sites.
Specialty sites. I mean, there are, of course, the religious ones, but there are also the specialty sites like Senior Singles Me and More Fish. And I know there are a number of them out there that are like that.
Yeah, the dating site industry is over $1 billion a year.
Yeah,
it is an enormous industry.
Big business. And seniors have become one of the most active groups of going onto the site. Now, there are a lot of apprehensions that we hear all the time, particularly from women. But we also hear from men. 5 years younger and 10 pounds lighter.
That's what they complain.
Okay. And of course, on the male part, you got their 10 and 15-year-old photos. Remember the one when they were in the gym? Well, okay. That's what they put up. And it's a big mistake because at the point that you meet, they immediately see
all the
that's not the person that was
all
on
the
there,
expectations go
so
on the handbasket.
It's starting with a lie, and it is really the wrong way to start a relationship. However, we do know that of people in a relationship, the second largest category
how they met
of how they met was online. That's 22% of people in a relationship met online.
So you said that's number 2, Hal.
I said that's number 2.
What's number 1?
Okay. Well, there are a couple of interesting things.
Of people in our demographic who indicated they were currently in a relationship, the second largest, the second most frequent way that the people met their partner was through an online service. It's a teaser. We'll come back next week, folks. We'll tell you number 1. No, we have the answer to that one.
Well, one of the things we hear, particularly from women, is that what they would like is to be introduced by someone they know. Their cousin. I know exactly the right person for you.
Have I got a guy?
Have I got a guy for you? Yeah. And of course, what they envision as the guy
for you
is not exactly what you think you should be involved with.
But they want the vetting. They want
I arranged that marriage. It's all my doing.
Yeah, the police report was totally bogus.
But of course, they have a very limited access to singles. They only know the few singles that they, the man down the street that they know is widowed and he's a nice guy. He brings them tomatoes over in the summer, but that goes on. That's part of community living. And so we know again from the data, 49% of women say that's what they would prefer.
Is their approach.
And 29% say that. But it's one of the meeting someone through a cousin or a recommendation.
But 49% of the women on it, but only 29% of the men prefer doing it that way.
And in fact, only 12% of those people in a relationship met through their cousin or a friend. The second largest is really being with people they knew in the past. How many people have been to a school reunion or a business reunion?
Alumni
association from high school or college? Yeah. Well, we hear so frequently that, I met the cheerleader.
We call it the reconnection.
The reconnection. You met now the cheerleader you remember from school. Except she's had 4 kids and she's widowed. She's a little rounder than she was, but the same bubbly personality.
That same attraction.
Yeah, and so it's nice to meet that person. And she's thinking, the woman is thinking, I remember the classroom nerd.
That nerdy
guy.
The
guy with the big hair, and well, now he's bald, but he just sold his business for $440 million. But you have to make some, you start to make some readjustments in meeting these people. You can't think of them the way they were, perhaps in personality, but not physically. They have changed. You have changed. And recognize that a lot of things have changed for all of us. We had a woman here speaking a while ago named Joan Price, and she spoke about something called Naked at Our Age was her book. And it's a pretty interesting book because it deals with the difficulty of taking your clothes off for the first time with somebody you've not been with before, and having the scars and the cesarean and the hip replacements and the rest of the stuff.
Hal had a cesarean.
Yeah,
he doesn't like to talk about it.
Come on. I've had both knees, both hips. I'm a mess.
That's true. That's true.
So, but that's some of the kinds of things that you have to make adjustments to. But the key thing is the concept of getting out.
Being exposed, getting yourself in the mix.
Getting into the mix. That's the key thing for both men and women. And in our book, Bill Novelli, if any of you have an old AARP card, if you look at it.
Is that like
Well, you wouldn't know. You're too young.
An old AARP
The old
card.
AARP. You'll see it's signed by Bill Novelli. He's an old friend of my wife and myself. And he wrote very effectively about moving on, and particularly about giving back into the community. And that's one of the things that is a very good way to meet other people. Not just meeting someone of the opposite sex, but meeting other friends that you can enjoy sharing things with. So that is one of the things we strongly try to put forward. Get out there. In fact, I think the last line of the book is get off your ass and get out there.
I'm not sure we used ass.
Was it?
We might have used butt, We may have,
Okay, get off your butt.
One in the school
system. I think
system.
we said get off your ass.
So Hal, we've discussed a little bit about getting out there, but one thing we've also done is we've asked, what are the people who we survey, what are they looking for in a new relationship and a partner?
We did another study. What we did, one of my coders at my company, I had a company of my own for 50 years that did research internationally all over the world, but I got one of the coders to, in effect, go online as me. And what she did was to pick out 200 women, all mature women. I think she used mostly 60s and 70s. I know she did. And were widowed or divorced. Excuse me. And she coded out what they said they were looking for in a man they would like to date.
It's sort of like the old personal ads. What do they write in?
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking for somebody a guy who likes walks on the beach at midnight. He's posing. Walks at the beach at midnight. Somebody who likes the ballet. Somebody, who really gets me. All I know is I went to the beach at midnight and nobody was there. So I got to think it's not true.
Okay. Surprisingly, only 8% wrote down appearance as an important characteristic of what they were looking for. What were the key things? Just about 50% wrote integrity and honesty, and the other was sense of humor. Those were the two major things that women wrote down.
So I'm batting 500 now.
Yeah, not bad. As the things that they were primarily interested. So, of course, we want to know what men were thinking about. And what men wrote was they wanted to be with someone they were comfortable to be with. That was what was
far and away in the
overwhelmingly
content.
comfort. And pleasant personality, and again, sense of humor. So we got some pictures of what people were looking for in another person that they wanted to connect with. But the most important reason that both men and women gave for wanting to couple was to have shared experiences.
They want to experience new things together.
Yeah,
They don't
new
want to
things
do it
together
as a solo.
and shared experiences from the past. And in fact, one of the myths that we hear about all the time is that older men want to date 30-year-old women. And we talk about BBBs, big boob blondes. Well, that's a media myth.
Yeah, it works well for sitcoms.
Yeah, that it kind of tends to be a running joke. But it's not what
Really?
men are looking for.
Not in
Men
the data.
prefer to date women of their own age. Why? They have more in common with them. So the BBB is really a media myth, and we think you should recognize that, because there are other things that the media, the arm candy concept. Well, that's not what most men are interested in. They want people they can be comfortable with, that they can share experiences. And by the way, we asked about hair coloring.
Because we had the BBB thing.
Yeah,
So we asked.
So we
prefer.
asked, okay, 48% of men preferred brunettes. Only 35% preferred blondes.
But since it was a B anyway, we figured the BBB thing worked anyway.
You don't even
so
know,
we didn't
you
know
don't even know about this, Mark.
Brown,
But I was giving a talk a couple of weeks ago, and one of my one-time clients was in the audience, and she was the research director of Clairol. And at that point, I said that. I thought she was going to throw something at me.
Yeah, brunettes work.
But she didn't.
So Hal, you told us what people are looking for, but what are they actually looking at? What is the key factor? Are they looking at the face? Are they looking at the figures? I mean, what are
the boobs? Or how big, you always hear this.
You said
boobs.
it. You said it.
Okay. I was on a golf cart with a close friend of mine who was also widowed at that time. And we were talking about the studies we were doing, because he was also in the research business. And in fact, his research company specializes in eye tracking. And they are, in fact, the largest eye tracking company in the world. So we started speculating about, we can find out, without ever asking a question, using their equipment, exactly what men look at. So we designed a study to do that. And we showed 100 men in 8 different parts of the country. They were all in the same category. And the women that they saw photos of were all mature women, no young, they were mostly, when you look at them, you would say, oh, she's probably in the 60s, she looks pretty good, or 70s or something like that. They had different hair coloring, different clothing designs, different stances, different figures, and we don't ask a single question, but the equipment will tell you exactly where the eyes focus and for how long they stay on. That's an example of some of the women that were in there, and they're all nicely-looking women. There's nothing particular. They could be sitting here in the audience, And what we found, overwhelmingly, men look first at the face. It's not a question asked, because we see, the equipment tells us exactly where their eyes go when these images come up. They go directly to the face. They may then scan the rest of the body.
We call it wander.
They scan the rest, but then they go back to the face, and particularly the eyes. And what we found is that a friendly, attractive smile is the most important and attractive thing to men. A friendly smile. Look, the hormones aren't going anymore. They're long since gone. When we were in high school and college,
Speak for yourself, Hal. You're really
okay. But you know, that's a realistic fact. And so the smiling face is a very important part of what men are looking for when they first meet a woman.
And in the book, we express that if women are interested, jewelry, earrings, necklaces, things that draw the eyes up, and it's called linger in the eye perception business, that keep their eyes at their face, will probably stack the deck a little bit more in your favor.
And of course, most women dress to accent their good parts and cover up their bad parts, because, you know, the 36, 24, 36, that's rare in nature. I mean, it can be created surgically, but it really doesn't exist for most people. And again, it's one of the kind of realistic things we point out. By the way, this book is a funny book. It's got a lot of numbers in it, but it's actually a pretty funny book, because that's the way Marc is. I did all the thinking, he did all the writing.
Yes, I made it watchable. So, in view of the fact that the face is so important in terms of making an initial connection, you know, we ask people, what is the most important doctor you should see if you have to prioritize going out?
No, it's not the plastic surgeon.
Come on. No. You want to tell them how?
It's the dentist. Now, why did we come to that conclusion? Because 30% of men and women say that they will not go on a second date with someone who has bad teeth.
That was very important. So we always suggest teeth whitening, very inexpensive. Invisalign, braces.
Veneers.
Even
those
better.
are beautiful.
Those are beautiful. There you go.
Do you want to recommend your dentist?
That's money well spent. But
see, that's a good smile.
There it is.
What's your phone number?
It also brought up the corollary about smoking.
Oh, yes. You know, smoking is not a good idea.
Certainly on the dating scene.
Men or women, there is a great reluctance. In fact, the comment I heard on one of the interviews is, kissing a person who smokes is like kissing an ashtray.
So if you're looking for an excuse to give it up, the research says this is probably as good a time as any. So what is it like on that first date? Is it
chemistry?
Is it there? I mean, is it important? Does it exist?
Well, you know, it's very hard to define what people mean by chemistry. Some spark or something happens. And we asked again, how important is this? And over 80% of both men and women say chemistry is important on a first date. But 90% said chemistry can develop over time.
So should you count them out after the first date because there isn't that magic?
If you meet a nice person, you may not have that immediate chemistry, but give it a chance. If you may find that you have a lot in common, and the chemistry will develop over some time. So if you meet a nice person, male, female, give them some time, because you never know. Good things may happen. It just may take a little longer.
And clearly the data says it can develop over time, that men and women will give it a chance. But guys, they're grazers. They like to move on. So we wonder what would happen. And then, Hal, we're at the part that you like the best. You know, we talk about it.
Let's talk about sex.
All right, Hal,
can we say that out loud?
I'm going to sit down.
Okay.
You take it over now. Because I don't want to talk about yours.
Well, okay. We asked people, how important do you think sex is in a relationship? And 66% of women, 71% of men said they felt it was a very important part of a relationship. But the key thing that came with that was that it was not the reason for the relationship, it was part of a relationship. And that's a very different perspective on where the role of sex is in the total scheme of people having a male-female relationship.
And for that matter, what the definition of sex is.
Yeah, because we find now that people talk about sex in a very broad way. It's not just intercourse.
That's Broadway, by the way, right over there.
But it's the touchy, the feely, the holding things. No, Mark, I'm not your type.
I start his engine like this. I really shouldn't do this.
And then the afterglow of it as well. And I think somewhere we have in the book we say, if you're done in 15 minutes, you're not doing it right.
Right.
So the extended opportunity for a broader aspect of what sex means to people is part of what we try to put forth in the book.
Yeah, we use the word intimacy more than sex because it really extends beyond.
Right. But there is a point where the physical part does enter into relationship.
When does that happen? I mean, we actually asked the question.
How many times do you go out on a date before you consider sex with that person you're dating? And this turned out to be very interesting. First of all, the whole question came up out of the depth interviews with women because they raised that issue. How many times do you go out before you consider having sex with the person, assuming you like them? We're not talking about some random situation. And we ran into what we call the 5-3 gap. What's the 5-3 gap? Well, women say you have to go out at least 5 times. Men say you have to go out at least 3 times. So there's a gap there. The guy is saying, we went to dinner, I took her to dinner 3 times, we had a great time, and I bring her home and all I get is a peck on the cheek. She's saying, oh, he's a really nice guy. I'd like to see him again.
3 times, this is great, it's going along great.
Yeah, he's really nice. We had a great evening.
So we figured 4 is the sweet spot.
Well, there's clearly a communication gap there. So how do you bridge that gap? And there are some interesting ways. You have a way?
Well, I don't think that it's about numbers.
Well, it really is.
Yeah,
but
I don't think it's about numbers. Well, we wanted, absolutely right. We wanted to quantify it, though. We wanted some empirical data, right, wrong, whatever. We wanted to know. We're going to ask them anonymously what the number was. And you're absolutely right. I mean, but I think that the third date myth has been out there since, I think, certainly when I was going out. I mean, it's still out there that the third date is the critical moment, right? The women are nodding, not so much. But the guy, you don't agree? Too low.
That's okay. You're allowed to have your opinion, even if you are wrong.
Even if the data says no, but you're absolutely right.
No, but it is correct. It's the way you feel.
Well,
that's at the base.
And we actually asked the question, we asked the women, would you have sex with a guy basically on the first date, just because you felt like it?
Right.
Just because you felt like it.
2% said yes.
Well, right, but we're asking the data now, 55 and older. Absolutely not.
Well, right now, women in this category, 2% said they would have sex on a first date. Only 2%, 98% no way. And when we translated it into numerics, they were using the 5 number as the
You have to go out 51 times if you really want to. Really kind of like want the sure thing. 51 is about that.
Come on, Mark, we'd be aged by then.
Yes, you have a question. Yes.
I went out with somebody who was very nice, but he brought up the sex thing too fast.
Yeah.
We brought up the guy brought up the sex thing too fast.
That's
Nothing to do with who I was.
Right. It was
sex, and that was a turn on.
we got into that as well, and we found that in many ways is a myth. One of the myths, that men are only interested in sex, and women over 60 do not have sex.
Yeah, both
and
myth.
Of course, both are wrong.
Both right. Both are wrong.
Yeah, both are wrong.
Weighed in and addressed me as a person would have made a whole difference.
We discovered that in a lot of cases, it's where the guys are on the time spectrum of being single. And we also quantified by divorced and widowed.
Yeah.
The divorced guys they're just out there right away, and they're looking for action. They read the numbers. They know they're in demand. If they drive at night in Florida, it's a bit. So when they first start dating, they tend to really push the envelope, and because they feel they're God's gift, and particularly the divorced guys. But along the dating spectrum, they tend to mature in terms of their overtness. Yeah. To push the sex issue. So you may have had a young...
widowed men don't date for a year to a year and a half. Now, obviously some do, but generally speaking, they have guilt feelings and they don't really get out there for a year to a year and a half. Overwhelming. That's over 60, 68%, if I remember. I'm sorry.
Did you qualify the number of times, let's say 3 times, 5 times, with safe sex? Because in this era, just to jump into bed with somebody may not be...
Can you hold that
we kind of get
later, because that's a really important issue.
We get up to that.
Really important issue.
It's a question of safe sex.
Yeah, but let's just stay with the 5-3 gap, because there are some ways to bridge that gap, and it's a communication issue. One of them that's very simple and very easy is, if she's really interested in the man, don't give him a quick peck on the cheek. Give him a real kiss, because that's going to say something. It's going to communicate that you're interested, and that's an important thing to do. Another good one is you can say, I understand you're interested in jazz, and there's a jazz concert coming up next week. Let me get us some tickets. Wow, that communicates a lot of things. One, you listened to his interests. Two, you're prepared to invest in the relationship financially. You're going to buy some tickets. And three, you're interested enough to want to go out with him again. So that says a lot. Of course, home cooking is another surefire way.
A big one. Big one.
But that's always dangerous, because you never know what's going to happen
after the meal.
Yeah,
but home cooking,
when you're both happy and you've had a bottle of wine and whatnot.
Sated.
I think it has a lot to do with intention. I think there are 2 kinds of men, very broadly speaking. One kind of man is really looking for the companionship of a relationship.
Right.
And the other kind of man is really, he's free, he's a player. And he doesn't want that kind of, relationship.
Right. Well,
so when
you're absolutely right.
Pushing sex, you know that that's the kind of man he is.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right. But that is not the bulk of men. The bulk of mature men seem to be looking for a relationship. And there are plenty that just say, oh, well, we're going to have a one-night stand. And that's not what most men are looking for. They want a relationship. And it's up to you to help develop that idea. I mean,
some guys, you're not going to. Some guys, as you mentioned before,
sure,
they're just not going to be interested in the relationship.
Wait a second. There are women
same way
that are exactly the same way. There's no question. So it's not purely a male-female thing. It's people that have that drive to have a sexual experience. And in fact, one of the questions we asked women, have you ever had sex with an acquaintance because you felt like it? Again, remember, these were all mature women. 45% said yes. They had a sexual activity with a friend, an acquaintance, just because they felt like it on that particular night. They wanted to have a sexual experience. So, look around you, ladies, because the woman sitting next to you was one of that 45%.
And Hal got the numbers.
You notice I didn't ask you to raise your hand.
That was a tough survey. Hal, you got a lot of numbers out of that survey.
Yeah, oh boy, dude. Marc said that in jest, but if you look at our data banks, I have tables stacked like that. I mean, there's an enormous amount of information. And the book which has a lot of data in it, is not a statistical book.
No,
the book is
very
a
little
funny
in the
book. It has narratives in it. It has hints. One of my favorite is cut your toenails. You'll figure out why. And it's filled with little items like that have to do with all kinds of things like your health, your finances, and of course the whole new dating culture. But just to give you some things to button up with. One of the basic things that, again, we try to put, that's the opening part of the book, is getting the basics of your life straightened out.
Right away.
That's the first thing. Your home, your food source, malnutrition avoidance is what we talk about.
Right, mostly.
Your health.
And your finances.
And your finances. And a good reason, particularly for men with finances, if you go out on a date and you take this woman to, what is it, Bernardine?
You're really dating yourself.
Yeah, whatever.
Le Horn and Harder?
Not the Horn. But some really fancy restaurant. And you're spending like $200. But that is not your normal kind of thing or what you can typically finance. That's a big mistake because you're giving her a false impression of what your normal life is like and what your means are like. So that's the thing. But you have to understand what your finances are. And those are some of the kinds of things.
Those are the big three.
Be receptive to possibilities. They exist all over.
Everywhere.
In fact, I know of a case where a couple met online at IKEA.
She was Swedish. Go figure, right?
I'm sorry. I have a friend here who was that person. So be prepared. Be prepared to meet somebody. That is, be open to it. One of the best things we've found is have a social card made. It has your name, your phone number, and your email, not your address. But it gives you the opportunity if you get it, to say, here's how you can reach me. And this works for both men and women.
Yeah, keep control though.
And you can control that. Also, being prepared.
Arlene, this is a question you asked.
Did I go into this one?
Nope, go for it, Hal. I know you're wearing that safe set.
One of the things I'm sorry? No address.
No address?
Because...
Well, you can reverse directory almost anything,
you're probably right.
except for cell phones.
But make it a little more difficult, because you don't want to give your address to somebody you really don't know.
Yeah, you certainly don't want to.
But they have to be able to reach you. They have to be able to reach you some way.
In today's data-driven society, it's very hard to remain anonymous. One of the suggestions we had was even on your personal checks, there's no reason to have your address.
Don't have your address
on your checks.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Just in the nature of being prepared, we asked women who were sexually active about condoms and lubes. A woman before asked about that. And 70% of women said it was appropriate for them to carry condoms as well as carrying lube.
This isn't 10W30. We just want to be sure we're all on the same page.
Yeah. KY jelly, okay.
That's what their number.
Okay. And we do have research on that. Don't be fearful of going online.
Give it a try.
As we said before, there's a lot of hesitation, a lot of concerns about it, but it is a way to scan a lot of people very quickly and see if you can find some, and then you may reject them.
Yeah, you
can
meet
them once, you have coffee or something. And
you can find out as much as what you don't want as you do.
And of course, if you meet a person, you go online and look them up.
Yeah, Google them right away.
Google them right away.
There's so many women, like you said, 3 to 1.
3 to 1.
Why do men need to be online? Don't you think that there's something wrong? Because women are so available everywhere.
Well, I think
it is a big problem.
Well, I think first of all, a lot of individuals use the specialty sites, either ethnicity, religion, the ones that focus interests. I saw one, you maybe saw it on TV, farmers, Is this should we advertise? Is this a big deal? Farmers' website, connect with other farm people, but it's out there. But I think the reason why a lot of the men do it initially, they check out the standards, the match, and then they find out what they don't want, and then they focus on these real specific sites, the J dates, that they really want to quantify a certain standard that they have. But even though I come from the personnel agency business, and we always said a good person is always hard to find. I mean, anybody can find anybody, but a good person is hard to find. And it's the same thing, with the demographic that we look at too. Even if the numbers are skewed way in the favor of guys, they're still looking for a certain quality woman. And that creates the pool, and you do get, as you said, the individuals who are at least, and when they initially hit the dating pool, and again, it's like the personnel business, when you first hit the job market, there's all these job opportunities out there. You say, this can take me 2 weeks to get a job. And sure, those are the ones that are out there, and all of a sudden those dry up, and there's one every other 6 months. It's the same thing on the dating pool.
I have a testimonial. My daughter met her husband online. Now, he is a gorgeous, wonderful, successful, amazing guy. I mean, I should have married someone else. And you would wonder, why would a guy like this, a young, gorgeous guy, go online?
Because he has many opportunities.
Yeah, and the online, the whole online atmosphere and aura today, it's so second nature, particularly in the group that you're talking. That's SOP. It's the number 2 service for us way to meet people. For your grandkids and your kids, number 1.
It's the same thing, that a man who is looking for a relationship, not everybody, but a man would go online.
Yeah, there's certainly no stigma attached to it for any
because
demographic.
you can scan many women in 10 minutes or many men in 10 minutes, where it's going to take you months, perhaps, to meet and
the men,
scan and
the men
find out
know
about
women
10
are
men.
looking at their
So
profiles. So
of course, there is another way to meet people. Get a dog.
Pets.
Pets are great. Walking a dog.
Fish, not so much. Dogs.
However, I mean this, I was in a place in Florida, and a woman was walking on a leash a pig.
Yeah.
I mean it.
I
couldn't believe this when I said, but she was walking a pet pig. Okay.
That's it. But pets definitely attract interest. There's a camaraderie of pet owners. And besides the corollary benefits of being, great company and unconditional love, it's one of our suggestions.
Yeah. Be a joiner. That's a very important idea. Join organizations that you're interested in, particularly ones that take advantage of your past experiences. I mean, you people are sitting here. You've had a life of experience. Take advantage of it. Let others take advantage of it. You can do things that 20-year-olds can't do because they don't have the background and experience that you do.
They don't know who the Beatles are, for God's sakes. I mean,
and again, in the book, Novelli report, he lists a whole bunch of things that are useful that can be part of the giving back. One other really important thing: have confidence in yourself.
Yeah,
You're individually unique people. We say to men all the time, don't try and duplicate your wife. Look, everybody's unique and individual. Enjoy the experience of meeting other interesting women and women from the same view. You're not going to duplicate your husband. He's gone. And he's a unique person, but he's gone.
And you shouldn't try and replace that individual.
That are also unique and interesting, and be open to and receptive to that. So there are a lot of things that you can do that can help you, in this whole business of moving on and moving forward. I mean, one of the things I hear all the time, men say, oh, my wife didn't have wrinkles. Of course she had wrinkles. He just never noticed them because they came up, and now he says, oh, I went out with this woman, but she's got wrinkles. So what?
Yeah.
Exactly right, so does he. So that's one. And now we're at an interesting point in time because we're at Valentine's Day, and people will say to us, well, how do we get a date over Valentine's Day? There's no quick and easy answer to that. But one of the things we've observed, and we've written about this in a column that we write for a publication in Florida, is to do your own party.
Yeah, host your own event.
And by that, what we've seen people do, and I actually know people that have done this, we didn't invent it, it was suggested by others, where they throw kind of a little community party with people they know, and each person that's invited has to bring somebody of the other sex, not a date.
Just somebody.
Not a date. Just bring your neighbor. Bring somebody else.
Shouldn't be married, though.
Just you bring somebody else of the opposite sex, and you explain to them, oh no, we're not going there for. You're not a date. You can even go by yourself. It's that we're all getting together. You can bring some food.
Yeah,
you can bring
public.
wine. It's a get together of friends. And it's an opportunity to mix over and using Valentine's Day as an excuse to put that
Great
together.
premise. We have the wrap up here.
Oh, okay.
We want to suggest, if you're interested, the website, suddenlysolo.org, the screenshot of it above our heads, changes almost daily. We encourage you to go. There's a great section in it, it's not shown in this, is the Ask Hal section. We take this input from info@suddenlysolo.org, and we do this segment also on our radio show, which is streamed, thank the Lord, because the reach of the station is 50 yards from the antenna. But these are questions that Hal fends off. And when Hal, can I do it? When Hal waffles, and Hal has a temper, when Hal, says, I see his point, but I see her point. I hit the bell. And I said, Hal, give me an answer. Don't waffle. So, see the Ask Hals. I won't let him waffle.
All right, enough of that. Anyway, the point is we're living at a time of a very new and different culture than what it was like in socialization from when we were single and dating 40 years ago. Everything has changed. In fact, the culture is more like what your grandchildren are doing rather than what your children are doing. And so you should be aware of that and of those changes. And again, in our book, we spend a lot of time trying to help people understand the culture that we're living in today. And it is an interesting and exciting time for all of us to be there. So thank you all.